You joining us. We'll get started here in just a minute. If you're just hopping on, which I see more people are, go ahead and find the chat and say hello and let me know where you're joining us from. We do have quite a bit to cover today, you guys. So I'm going to go ahead and get started because it looks like you guys are having no problem finding the chat. So I'll go ahead and share my slides here and we'll dive right in. All right, you guys. So welcome everybody. Welcome to my masterclass. This is the 3 evidence-based strategies to repair your blood sugar and A1C. So for those of you who are new to my world, my name's Mallory. I am a functional nutritionist and I specialize in helping people like you with type 2 diabetes and prediabetes. So when I first started doing this work, I realized that there was a really common theme that was keeping people sick and dependent on a lifetime of blood sugar medications. So what I realized early on was that people with diabetes were being given really bad nutrition advice. And it was obvious to me that it wasn't that people were non-compliant, it was that they were really severely misinformed. So I realized that most people are told to eat all the wrong things. They're often told to eat foods that are actually spiking their blood sugar, like oatmeal. And then they're being told to avoid foods that don't spike their blood sugar, like meat. So it's honestly just mind-boggling for me to watch. And I see it creating so much mass confusion in this community. What I also see is medications being used as a first line of defense against type 2 diabetes, which is really unfortunate because this disease is very repairable with diet alone. So between all the bad nutrition advice and all the medications, it's really obvious to me why so many people fail to put diabetes in remission. And that's why I created this training for you guys. So like I said, we have a lot to cover here. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so what I'm going to share with you today is very different than what most doctors, dietitians, and diabetes educators have to say. This is not, and I repeat, not your traditional diabetes education class. So I hope you all showed up with an open mind. We're going to cover some really high-level concepts. So I do ask that you do your best to block out any distractions right now so that you can get the most out of our time together. So that means, turn your phone on silent, close the extra tabs on your internet browser, and let your family know that you're unavailable for the next, I'm going to say, hour and 20 minutes, okay? If you need to go early, don't worry. You're going to get an email with the replay afterwards. But really, this training, I promise you guys, the first hour is dedicated to education that this community so desperately needs. At the end of the training, I will take some time to explain how I can help you moving forward if you're interested in that. But just know that the first hour is absolutely 100% dedicated to you and information that I think is really crucial for this community to understand. Okay, awesome. We're going to get into Q&A at the very end of this training, but before we do that, I'm going to share a free gift. It's called 7 Days to Balance Blood Sugar. And this is basically a fully loaded 7-day meal plan that has delicious recipes for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and dessert every day for 7 days. So this is really going to allow you to take action on what I teach you today and watch your numbers drop over the next 7 days. So you guys, type I'm staying if you commit to stay to the end to get this free 7-day meal plan. Type I'm staying in the chat. All right, cool. Lots of you guys sticking around. So here's my promise to you guys today. By the end of this training, I'm going to show you how to take the guesswork out of diabetes so you can actually repair your blood sugar and A1C without relying on a lifetime of medications. So today you'll discover why whatever it is that you've been doing for months or years or even decades is not working, and I'll walk you through exactly what does. So just imagine being able to skip over the guessing, the Googling, the trial and error, and just do what works. So you guys, again, type "I'm ready" in the chat if you're ready to learn how to actually repair your blood sugar and A1C in a way that no medicine can do. All right, cool. Okay, so before we go any further, I want you to type "me" in the chat if you can relate to anything on my screen here. So are you tired of giving up sugar and sweets, potatoes and bread to realize that your blood sugar is still high? Do you feel overwhelmed, confused, and paralyzed by so much conflicting information? Maybe you're being pulled in two totally different directions, like going keto versus going plant-based or vegetarian. Are you fed up with eating less, exercising more, and getting nowhere? Okay, lots of me's. Again, I have more for you, so type "me" in the chat if you can relate to anything on my screen now. So are you a slave to your eating schedule? Do you find yourself eating 5 to 6 small meals and snacks each day to, quote, keep your blood sugar stable? Do you find yourself chasing around high blood sugar with medications and bouts of low blood sugar with things like juice? Do you feel nervous to see your doctor because you don't want to start more meds? Are you tired of pricking your finger and obsessing over your blood sugar readings every day? Okay, so you guys can clearly see that you're not alone. I see lots of me's in the chat, and I promise that whatever you're currently doing that's not working, it's not your fault. I get how confusing this whole topic of blood sugar and diabetes is. And even with a background in nutrition, it took me years to crack the diabetes code. But now I want to take a minute and paint a picture of what's really possible for you. So you guys tell me in the chat which of these scenarios would be a dream come true for you. So can you imagine a day without pricking your finger? Can you imagine knowing exactly what to eat, limit, and avoid for balanced blood sugar? Can you imagine not stressing about your next doctor's appointment? Or better yet, looking forward to your next doctor's appointment? Can you imagine breaking the generational curse of diabetes for your children, grandchildren, and future generations of your family? Can you imagine waking up every day feeling confident and healthy and empowered instead of feeling like diabetes is running the show, or maybe you feel like diabetes is a major part of your identity? I hear that a lot. Okay, cool. So today, I'm going to share the most effective way to stop relying on finger pricks to tell you what you don't want to know, how to support your blood sugar, whether you're dining out or you're eating a home-cooked meal, how to be your doctor's favorite success story, which many of my clients are, how to put an end to your family history or that generational curse of type 2 diabetes, and how to gain the confidence and health you so badly want and deserve. All right, you guys. So let me go ahead and formally introduce myself for those of you who are new to my world. My name is Mallory Nowak. I'm a functional nutritionist, and I'm the proud founder of the Type 2 Transformation Program. Back in 2013, I graduated from California State University, Sacramento, with a degree in nutrition and food science. And then a few years later, I went on to become a functional nutritional therapy practitioner, otherwise known as an NTP. So today, I help people with type 2 diabetes and pre-diabetes repair their blood sugar and A1C naturally, so they don't have to keep relying on a lifetime of medications. I'm also a Northern California native. I consider myself a reduce, reuse, recycle enthusiast, and I also consider myself a total foodie. So I love cooking, I love trying new restaurants and visiting the farmers markets. I recently started gardening, and my favorite channel, hands down, is the Food Network. And then this last bullet here is a little bit hard to admit, but I did used to believe that type 2 diabetes was an irreversible progressive disease. I used to believe that it would eventually require a lifetime of medications and insulin injections. But I'm really excited to be here with you guys and sharing this information, because I think a lot of you are probably in the same boat. A lot of you in the audience right now have probably been given the same impression about diabetes. And so we're going to turn all of that on its head today. So just a little rewind. During my first education in nutrition from California State University, Sacramento, I was taught that diabetes was an irreversible disease that was bound to get worse over a person's lifetime. Maybe you guys can relate. At the time, I was taught that doctors couldn't cure it, diabetes educators couldn't fix it, dietitians couldn't figure it out. So naturally, I believed that type 2 diabetes was a lost cause. So for the longest time, I felt completely helpless. And every time I tried to learn more, I was overwhelmed and confused by all the conflicting information. So you guys tell me in the chat how you're feeling. Are you feeling confused, overwhelmed, frustrated, maybe worried? Are you feeling something different? I know that I can't be the only one who felt this way, and I want you to see that you're not alone if you're feeling anything but optimistic here. All right, so yeah, a lot of you guys confused, worried, frustrated, totally. So deep down, and maybe you feel this way too, deep down, I always knew diabetes didn't have to keep getting worse. I cringed when I heard of people being prescribed medications without being given any solid nutrition advice. I couldn't stand the food being served to people with diabetes in hospitals, and it honestly made my blood boil to see so much bad nutrition advice out there that was keeping people sick. So what I realized was that the type 2 community was bombarded with misinformation, and I knew that they deserved a fighting chance to turn things around. So back then, I cannot explain how cheated I felt by all the harmful information I've been taught over the years. And what was even worse for me personally was I felt guilty because I'd been sharing this information with other people. So I decided that I needed to have a deep understanding of exactly how it all worked, not based on what dietitians or diabetes educators had to say, not even based on what the American Diabetes Association had to say, right? I needed facts that were rooted in science, not theories that look good on paper. And I had to show up with a very open mind, and I had to unlearn a lot of what I was taught over the years. And I hope you guys here are willing to do the same, because if you keep following the same old strategies, you will keep getting the same old results. So type me in the chat if you're willing to go about this a different way, if you're willing to try something new. Okay, so yeah, I hear you guys. I see that there's a lot of frustration in the chat, right? I hear you. But the good news is that there is a simple and effective way to repair your blood sugar in a way that no medicine can possibly do. And when I showed up with an open mind and started looking for answers, I discovered this has nothing to do with calories, has nothing to do with fat, has nothing to do with exercise. And now I want to debunk all the misinformation I see floating around and teach you guys how it's done too. So type yes in the chat if you want to learn how to actually repair your blood sugar and A1C so you don't have to stay on all those nasty blood sugar medications for the rest of your life. And throughout this training, I have sprinkled in some of my client success stories to share with you because honestly, whenever I attend trainings like this, these are always my favorite part. So let me tell you about an old client of mine, Chandra. When I met Chandra, she had just been diagnosed with an A1C of 12.5, which some of you guys are aware is a very high A1C. And her doctor's knee-jerk reaction was to prescribe insulin injections. Now, Chandra didn't know how she was going to do it, but she was determined to stay off the medications, especially insulin injections. One thing about Chandra was she wanted to set a good example for her teenage son. And one of her goals was to lose weight so she could ride roller coasters again, which always makes me smile. I love that story. So she asked her doctor, she said, will you please give me 90 days to get my A1C down? And her doctor kind of begrudgingly agreed. And long story short, Chandra found me just a couple weeks after that appointment with her doctor. And 10 weeks into the type 2 transformation program with me, she was due for her next 90-day checkup. And her A1C came back, slashed in half, less than half. It came back at 6.1 without a single medication. So not only did Chandra's doctor obviously want to know how the heck she did it, but her doctor also admitted that she didn't think this was possible because she'd never seen anyone do it before. Also, you guys, fast forward to today, and Chandra's lost over 80 pounds, and her A1C is now under 5.7. So it's completely out of the, not even in the pre-diabetic range anymore. So I'm sharing this story to say that it is quite possible that your doctor, nurse, or dietitian has never seen someone reverse their diabetes. And it's possible that your doctor thinks meds are the only solution, and you could be the first person to prove them wrong, like Chandra did. So type me in the chat if you want to know how Chandra did this, how she got her A1C out of the diabetes danger zone under 5.7. All right, cool. So now I just want to take a minute and have you imagine that you successfully lower your blood sugar in a matter of days. Imagine you start to notice that your diabetes symptoms are diminishing. Imagine that you feel excited instead of nervous to see your doctor at your next checkup. Imagine that you get to celebrate your next A1C results. So on a scale of 1 to 10, tell me how amazing would that make you feel? Drop a number in the chat. Okay, cool. You guys are interested. We're going to get into it, I promise. So it's time to go ahead and we'll dive into the 3 core concepts of this training, starting with core concept number 1, which is the real reason why what you're doing isn't working. So here are a list of the 3 most common mistakes I see in the type 2 community. And I can almost guarantee that if you're stuck right now, you're making 1 or more of these 3 mistakes. And a lot of people are making all 3 of these. So they're all very common. I know that they look good on paper and I'll explain each of them individually. But mistake number 1 is that you're focusing on calories. Mistake number 2 is you're following what I call the mainstream diabetes guidelines. Again, I'll cover what that means in a minute. And mistake number 3 is that you're relying on medications to bring your numbers down. So again, I know all these things look good on paper, but it's quite possible that this is exactly what's keeping you stuck. So let me explain what I mean by that. So mistake number 1, you're focusing on calories. And when I say that, I just want to also say that this is so ingrained in our culture that you might not even realize you're doing it. So type 1 in the chat if you're doing any of the things listed on my screen here. So focusing on calories can look like trying to eat less and exercise more. That's like the go-to method for most people, right? It can also look like relying on portion control, so trying to eat smaller portions. It can look like switching to 0-calorie sweeteners like Splenda or drinking diet soda instead of regular soda. It could be choosing lean meat, right? Instead of the fattier cuts, you're choosing the lean meat, or choosing low-fat dairy products. That's also a way to cut calories, or choosing reduced fat or low-calorie foods. And it could also look like making a beeline for the calorie count on food labels, right? How many of you guys are nutrition facts readers? You know, you look at your food labels. So if you're making a beeline for the calorie count, that is your way of relying on calories, focusing on calories. And then another way of doing it would be focusing or using apps like MyFitnessPal and really focusing on the calories there. So I'm seeing lots of 1s in the chat. Everything listed here is a sign that you're focusing on calories, whether you realize it or not. So in order to understand why I'm saying that focusing on calories is a problem, you need to understand that not all calories are created equal from a blood sugar perspective. So essentially, what you need to understand is that all food is made up of 3 macronutrients: carbohydrates, protein, and fat, okay? And each of these 3 macronutrients has a very different effect on your blood sugar. So this is what the graph here is showing you. So what you can see on the graph here is that carbohydrates, which are listed in that yellowish green color, these have a very strong stimulating effect on our blood sugar. So carbohydrates spike our blood sugar a lot, as you can see in the graph. Protein, which is listed in orange, has kind of a moderate effect on our blood sugar. And then fat, which is listed in blue, has an almost non-existent effect on our blood sugar. So here's the deal with calories. Here's where calories come into play. Carbohydrates are low in calories, and fat is high in calories. So when you're choosing low calorie or low fat foods, you're often choosing foods that are high in blood sugar spiking carbohydrates. You're choosing foods that are high in the macronutrient that spike your blood sugar the most. So just to drive this point home even further, let me give you an example. Let's go ahead and compare a high carbohydrate breakfast to a low carbohydrate breakfast, both with the same amount of calories, okay? So let's just say 500 calories from a high carbohydrate breakfast, like a bowl of oatmeal or low-fat yogurt with some fruit. This is going to cause your blood sugar to spike. Whereas 500 calories from a high-fat, high-protein breakfast, like eggs cooked in butter with bacon and avocado, this is going to have a much smaller impact on your blood sugar. And it's crazy, right? Because some of you were told to eat oatmeal for breakfast. How many of you guys were told to eat oatmeal for breakfast, right? I see this all the time. And it's honestly a terrible idea for someone with diabetes. And when I say that, some of you guys are going to question me, right? And I always say, I encourage you, don't trust me blindly. Test this for yourself. I encourage you to test this for yourself. Compare the two and see what happens. But again, just remember, not all calories are created equal from a blood sugar perspective. Okay, what you also need to know about carbohydrates, because everyone's talking about carbohydrates when you're diagnosed with diabetes, but a lot of people don't understand why, right? So I want to explain why. What you need to know is that all carbohydrates are chains of sugar molecules, whether they taste sweet or not. And because of this, all carbohydrates enter your body as sugar molecules after they go through the digestive process, okay? So this is true, whether we're talking about the carbohydrates in healthy whole foods, like whole grains and oatmeal and fruit, brown rice, potatoes, and even natural sweeteners like honey, as well as pasta, bread, and tortillas, okay? So all carbohydrates enter your body as sugar molecules, even savory carbohydrates that don't taste sweet. So I hope you guys can see how even healthy whole foods can raise your blood sugar and why simply switching to a whole food diet is not necessarily the answer to type 2 diabetes. And then just to kind of even drive this point home even further, I want to also add that portion control diets, low calorie diets, low fat diets, and especially you guys, vegan, vegetarian, and plant-based diets, these diets might be low in calories, but they also happen to be high in blood sugar spiking carbohydrates. So even the healthiest vegan foods like quinoa and whole grains and beans are really quite high in carbohydrates. And this is why so many people see their numbers go up when they switch to a vegan or vegetarian diet. And this is also why I feel so strongly that going plant-based or vegetarian is not a suitable approach for someone with diabetes or pre-diabetes. Okay, mistake number 2 is that you're following what I call the mainstream diabetes guidelines. So this is the advice that most doctors, nurses, dietitians, diabetes educators, and even the American Diabetes Association itself tends to recommend. So type 2 in chat if you've been given any of the advice on my screen. The most common mainstream advice I see floating around is to eat somewhere between 30 to 60 grams of carbs per meal, plus more for snacks. So again, type 2 if you've been told to eat somewhere between 30 to 60 grams of carbs per meal, And I know a lot of people are told to eat 45 grams of carbs per meal. So that's right in the middle, right? So some of the other mainstream guidelines include eating 6 to 8 times a day instead of filling up at mealtime, to eat lots of whole grains like oatmeal and brown rice and quinoa, and to eat less meat, to eat more fruits and veggies, and to choose low fat everything. So, lean meat, low fat dairy, etc. Okay, I'm seeing lots of twos in the chat. So here's the problem with the mainstream guidelines. So eating 30 to 60 grams of carbs per meal, plus more for snacks. If you do the math on that, that is a heck of a lot of carbohydrates. And you guys saw in the graph what carbohydrates do to your blood sugar. So in my experience, this is way too many carbs to actually reverse diabetes. And eating 6 to 8 times a day, AKA grazing, it literally makes insulin resistance worse by keeping your blood sugar elevated 6 or 8 or more times a day. And the advice to eat more whole grains and fruit and less meat and fat is honestly just downright boggling to me, because grains and fruit have a very significant impact on our blood sugar, whereas meat and fat just simply don't. So let me tell you about another old client of mine named Dave. When I met Dave, he had been pre-diabetic for many years. And from an outsider's perspective, it actually didn't make a lot of sense because he ate a pretty clean whole foods diet. Dave really likes to cook. And so, he was cooking a lot of things from scratch. And he also walked 4.5 miles every single morning religiously, as in pretty much rain or shine. But over the years, he just couldn't seem to get his A1C down. And his doctor had tried prescribing insulin more than a few times, but Dave was really resistant and really determined to avoid the medications and get his A1C down naturally. He just didn't know how. So by the end of Dave's 12 weeks with me inside the Type 2 Transformation Program, not only did he lose over 40 pounds, but his A1C came back at 5.8. So you guys, when I say that you can achieve a lot in just 12 weeks, I really mean it. And I don't care how long this has been going on or how high your A1C is right now. If you guys do it the right way for 3 months, you will get results. So I also want to share that I need to update the slide because it's been well over a year since Dave graduated, and he has maintained over 50 pounds of weight loss, and he's kept his A1C out of the pre-diabetic range without a single blood sugar medication. And in fact, you guys, not only that, but he has seen improvements in his cholesterol. He has seen huge improvements in his blood pressure, and his doctor actually took him off of his blood pressure medications and even his heartburn. So even digestively, he's seen benefits. So the most important part of this story is that Dave realized that what he was doing wasn't working. He knew that if he doubled down on the same old strategies for another 5 years, he'd continue getting the same old results. So as backwards as my approach sounded, he was open-minded and willing to give it a shot. So I'm curious to hear where you guys stand. So type A, if you're open to trying something different, or type B, if you want to give your new medication time to kick in, or double down on the nutrition advice you were already given from someone else, or whatever else you're currently doing. I'm just curious to hear where you guys are at. Okay, so mistake number 3. Awesome. I'm glad to hear you guys are interested, open-minded to hear another way. Okay, so mistake number 3 is that you're relying on medications like metformin, glipizide, glimepiride, Lantus, Januvia, Ozempic, Actos, Sparxiva, Trulicity, insulin injections. Honestly, you guys, they're coming out with new diabetes medications every day. So there's too many to even list or keep up with, but you guys get the point. And I've talked to a lot of people who were hopeful that these medications would solve their blood sugar problems, only to find that their numbers start creeping back up over time and the doctor starts writing more prescriptions, right? Sound familiar? I know a lot of people are fed up with side effects. Insulin makes it almost impossible to lose weight. Metformin keeps you glued to a toilet all day long. Jardiance and Farxiga cause recurring yeast infections, and the list goes on and on and on. So a lot of people start to worry that this might mean that their body's broken or that their pancreas isn't producing enough insulin because their numbers keep climbing higher. But that's actually not what's going on at all. So you guys type 3 in the chat if at one point or another you've wondered why your numbers are still high, even though you take your medications as prescribed. And I also just want to add, and this is going to sound maybe a little jarring for some of you, but I also want to add that when your doctor's writing another prescription, that is a telltale sign that your diabetes, your insulin resistance has gotten worse, not better, right? So just keep that in your back pocket. That's important. Okay, lots of 3s. Cool. So here's the thing about diabetes medications. So here in the United States, we rely really heavily on medications as the first line of defense against high blood sugar, when in reality, there's a much better way to go about this. So here's the thing about those diabetes drugs. While these medications can artificially lower your blood sugar in the short term, they blatantly ignore the actual problem. They're the epitome of a Band-Aid approach to type 2 diabetes. So let me give you guys an analogy. So taking medications for your high blood sugar is like taking an aspirin when your foot hurts because there's a rock in your shoe. It's just a Band-Aid, right? It just masks the problem. So the real solution, obviously, would be to take off your shoe and remove the rock. And today I'm going to explain the real solution to type 2 diabetes on this training. So the truth of the matter is, and I can say this with absolute certainty, is that not a single pill or injection on the market is capable of actually reversing type 2 diabetes. They are all just Band-Aids. And the bigger problem I have with these diabetes meds is that most of them make insulin resistance worse, which explains why so many people find themselves needing more and more medications to get the job done as they become more and more insulin resistant. So you guys, if you haven't already, type 3 in the chat if you relate to any of this. Okay, so if your blood sugar and A1C are not coming down and you find yourself taking more and more medications, I want you to know that your body is not broken, your pancreas is not petering out, and the answer is not another prescription. You're just missing something. So when I met Jennifer, she had been taking oral medications and insulin injections long enough to realize this for herself. She was literally doing everything right by conventional standards. She was following the mainstream guidelines we talked about earlier. She was going to all of her 3-month checkups. She was seeing an endocrinologist she was referred to, and she was taking all of her medications exactly as prescribed. She was a really compliant patient. But when it came down to it, it seemed like the only thing anyone could offer her was more prescriptions. Maybe you guys can relate. And she decided, she was ready to try another way. She knew she was missing something. So she joined me inside the Type 2 Transformation Program. And by the end of our 12 weeks together, Jennifer had dropped her insulin dose 3 times, and her A1C went from 8.2 to 6.1 with less medication, right? And then 3 months after that, her A1C was under 5.7. How incredible, right? And today, Jennifer still keeps in touch with me. She's completely off of insulin, and her doctor is so proud. She's well on her way to getting off of all of her other medications. Her A1C is looking fantastic. And, the important thing to know here is that Jennifer knew she was missing something, and she was willing to show up with an open mind. So type me in the chat if you're willing to do the same so that you can also get results like this. Okay, so just to review real quick, reviewing core concept number 1, the reason why focusing on calories, following mainstream diabetes guidelines, and relying on medications, the reason why these things doesn't work is that they do nothing to address the root cause of diabetes, and some of these mistakes actually make insulin resistance worse. So now it's time to uncover the root cause of type 2 diabetes with core concept number 2. This is the discovery I made that changed everything. It explains why the mainstream guidelines don't work, why the medications are really just a Band-Aid, and it has everything to do with a notorious little hormone called insulin. But before we get into this, we need to have a better understanding of what this mysterious little hormone actually is. So you first need to know that insulin is a hormone that your pancreas makes, and its job is to lower your blood sugar, okay? It's a hormone your pancreas makes, and its job is to lower your blood sugar. And the second bullet here is really, really important. Insulin is your body's only way to lower your blood sugar when your blood sugar gets too high. So I'm going to say that again. Insulin is your body's only way to lower your blood sugar when it gets too high. You should also know that insulin is a fat storage hormone, meaning anytime your insulin levels are elevated, you can't burn fat. You can only store it. So this explains why weight gain is such a well-known side effect of insulin injections. But what a lot of people don't realize is that whether the insulin is coming from your pancreas naturally or coming from an injection, that's completely irrelevant. High insulin makes it impossible to lose weight. So those of you who are in the audience right now thinking, well, I'm not on insulin injections, I'm telling you, your insulin levels are high and it makes it really hard to lose weight. So type me in the chat if you were told to lose weight when you were diagnosed. This is really common. I see this all the time. And it's honestly like got to be one of the most frustrating pieces of advice that you can get when you're dealing with diabetes, because high insulin makes weight loss really hard. So if you've been struggling to lose weight, I want you to know that this is not a calorie problem. This is an insulin problem, okay? Yeah, lots of you guys. And then lastly, you should also know that the vast majority of people with type 2 diabetes produce plenty of insulin naturally by their pancreas, meaning lack of insulin is not the problem here. And I know some of you guys are already one step ahead of me, probably wondering, well, then why are they talking about prescribing insulin injections, right? It's an absolutely great question. So let's talk a little bit more about that. Okay, so what is insulin resistance? Having type 2 diabetes or pre-diabetes means you have something known as insulin resistance. And what this basically means is that your body has become desensitized to insulin, and therefore you require more insulin than what's considered normal to lower your blood sugar. I'll repeat that one more time. It means that you require more insulin than normal to lower your blood sugar. So flags should be going off, right? This is a major problem because remember, insulin is your body's only way to lower your blood sugar, and you need more of it. So when you're insulin resistant, your blood sugar overreacts to carbohydrates because the normal amount of insulin isn't enough to keep your blood sugar in range. Does that make sense, you guys? Just let me know you're still with me. When you're insulin resistant, your blood sugar overreacts because the normal amount of insulin is not enough to keep your blood sugar in range when you eat carbohydrates. Okay, so now you're probably wondering about the elephant in the room. What causes this insulin resistance to begin with, right? So the short answer to that question is persistently high insulin. And I have a great analogy that I'll share. It's my favorite way to explain this. So here's my analogy. So let's say, you know how someone who drinks a lot of alcohol, they build up a tolerance to it, right? If someone drinks a lot, we say they have a high tolerance for alcohol. So we can also call this a resistance to alcohol. So let me give you an imaginary example. Let's say there's a guy named Bert who drinks alcohol 7 days a week. And then there's another guy named Carl, and Carl only drinks on holidays and special occasions. So Bert, who drinks every day, might need 6 or 7 cocktails to get a buzz. Whereas Carl might only need 2 or 3 drinks to get a buzz because he doesn't drink very often, right? So this is because Bert has built up a strong tolerance to alcohol, which is otherwise known as a resistance, whereas Carl is still quite sensitive to it, right? So a similar story can be told of insulin and insulin resistance. We build up a resistance to insulin when we keep insulin levels persistently high. Just like Bert builds up a resistance to alcohol by keeping his alcohol intake persistently high. So insulin resistance explains why you need more insulin to get your blood sugar down, just like it takes Bert more booze to feel the effects of alcohol. So you guys, let me know, does that make sense? Are you guys still with me? This is honestly the best analogy I've been able to come up with, is using alcohol, because most people can kind of relate. So just type yes in the chat to let me know that this makes sense so far. And then we're going to talk a little bit more about symptoms of insulin resistance here. Okay, cool. Thank you. Okay, so real quick, I want you guys to see some of the many, many ways that insulin resistance is impacting your body. And I want you to know that everything listed on my screen here is extremely common. You're not alone if you're dealing with 3 or 5 or 11 of these symptoms. So I want you to count how many of these symptoms on my screen here are true for you. Starting with, in the box there, starting with an A1C over 5.7 and or a fasting blood sugar over 100. So if you have both of those, which I'm kind of guessing you do if you're here, then that's 2. And then we'll go down the list and you can count the rest. So excessive thirst and urination. This includes getting up in the middle of the night to use the restroom. Difficulty losing weight. Again, coming back to insulin being a fat storage hormone. And if your A1C is elevated, we already know your insulin levels are high, right? You've got insulin resistance. A tendency to carry weight in the midsection. You would not believe how many of my clients can lose a couple or a few inches in their waist alone in just 12 weeks. Peripheral neuropathy. That can feel like numbness, tingling, pain, or itching. It's usually in your hands or your feet. Vision loss, right? Vision problems. Poor circulation, insatiable appetite or cravings. Low energy and brain fog. You guys, I don't know if you've heard this, but recent studies are indicating that insulin resistance can be a leading cause of dementia. And they're starting to call this type 3 diabetes. Inflammation in your pain or pain in your joints, very common. In fact, I love that one because that symptom resolves itself so quickly. I have so many clients who, had so much inflammation in their knuckles that they couldn't make a fist. And like within our first month together, they're like, wow, I feel so much better. I can make a fist now. High cholesterol and high triglycerides, especially high triglycerides, fatty liver, and eventually kidney failure. And I'm sure this isn't even all of them, right? So I'm seeing quite a variety of numbers in the chat. But yeah, as you can see here, insulin resistance, it's impacting every system of your body, from your eyes all the way down to your toes. And left unchecked, these symptoms can lead to more serious complications like blindness, amputations, dementia, and even a lifetime of dialysis due to kidney failure. But you guys, like I said, the insulin resistance piece of the puzzle is very repairable. And it's so fun to see all these symptoms resolve themselves when you actually reverse the insulin resistance. So for example, Jane is a great example of this. When I met her, her A1C was almost 12, again, very high. And she was experiencing quite a few of these symptoms and was really just plain not feeling good. She complained that she had no energy, which sucked because Jane actually has a very active life. She works full time and she has 6 adult children and 11 grandbabies at the time, with more on the way. So when we were working together, she had 11 grandbabies with more on the way. So I'm pretty sure she's got like 13 of them now. And she was very involved in helping take care of them and spending time with them. So she had a lot of motivation to stay healthy, and she had a lot of motivation to get her energy back. So by the end of her time with me in the type 2 transformation program, her A1C came down to 5.9 and she lost 50 pounds. And she just kept saying how she was feeling better than she had in years. Every time I saw her, she just looked so vibrant on Zoom and was so excited to share her results with us. And she just kept saying and beaming, saying, my kids, my adult children are so proud of me. Just so nice to hear. So you guys type "I'm ready" in the chat if you're ready to learn how Jane dropped her A1C from 11.9 to 5.9. All right, cool. So now it's time to get into core concept number 3. And I just want to say, in case I haven't made myself clear, insulin resistance is totally reversible with the right approach. So we're going to get into it in core concept number 3, which is how to get off the blood sugar roller coaster. So when I say insulin resistance is reversible, what I'm talking about is insulin sensitivity. Insulin sensitivity is the opposite of insulin resistance. And the goal here is to become more insulin sensitive. So you guys type yes or no in the chat. I'm curious, have you ever heard of insulin sensitivity before? Because for some reason, I find that nobody's really talking about this. So don't feel bad if you've never heard of it. But what you need to remember is that this is the goal. Insulin sensitivity is the only real solution to type 2 diabetes. Okay, I'm seeing quite a mix, mostly no's, but I'm seeing some of you have heard of it. Cool. So here's how I want you guys to think about this. So I want you to think of insulin resistance and insulin sensitivity like a spectrum, okay? You're not either insulin sensitive or insulin resistance. It's not a black or white issue. It's more of a spectrum, and you fall somewhere on the spectrum. So going back to the alcohol example, we're going to keep going back to this. Someone who drinks alcohol every single day is very resistant to it. And someone who rarely drinks alcohol is very sensitive to it, right? So, and then, of course, there are lots of people who fall somewhere in between on the spectrum, right? So right now, I think it's pretty safe to say that you're somewhere on the more resistant side of the spectrum. But with the right approach, you can move towards the more sensitive side of the spectrum. So you guys are probably wondering, how do you do this? How do you reverse the insulin resistance and become more insulin sensitive, right? So we had a lot of ground to cover before we got to this point, but here it is. This is a slide worth taking a picture of, to be honest. This is the one and only solution to type 2 diabetes. So we already learned earlier that persistently high insulin is what's causing this insulin resistance, right? Just like Bert drinking 7 days a week has caused him to build up a resistance to the alcohol. But what I haven't shared with you yet is that persistently low insulin reverses it. You guys, that's it. It is really as simple as that, right? Isn't that crazy? Such good news. So again, just imagine Bert, who's built up a strong resistance to alcohol. He drinks every single day. And imagine that Bert stops drinking alcohol. So after a couple months of sobriety, he'll become sensitive to alcohol again, meaning it'll take less alcohol for him to get the same buzz that maybe used to take him 6 or 8 drinks before. And on the opposite side of the spectrum, let's say Carl, who rarely drinks alcohol, let's say Carl all of a sudden decides he starts drinking 7 days a week. After a couple months of doing that, Carl's going to start to build up a resistance to alcohol, meaning it'll take more booze for him to get the same buzz that he used to get off just 2 or 3 drinks. So you guys, I hope this is making sense. Let me know in the chat. Just say yes if this is making sense. Because the same thing can be said of insulin and insulin resistance. By keeping your insulin levels persistently high, you build up a resistance to insulin, right? Then you have insulin resistance. And the good news is by keeping your insulin levels persistently low, over time, you can become sensitive to it again. So just remember, insulin sensitivity is the ultimate goal, and it's the only way to repair insulin resistance and reverse diabetes and prediabetes. Okay, I'm really glad this is making sense. Okay, so you guys are probably wondering at this point, you're all one step ahead of me, I'm sure. You guys are probably wondering, how do you do this? How do you keep your insulin levels low? You understand that that's the answer here, right? So if we can all agree that the solution is to keep your insulin levels low, that's the $1 million question. How do you do it? So you guys, type me in the chat if you're ready to learn how to actually reverse the insulin resistance by keeping your insulin levels low. Okay, so In order to answer that question, you need to understand what causes high insulin to begin with. So just remember, insulin is your body's only way to lower your blood sugar. So anytime your blood sugar's high, insulin's also going to be high. So therefore, anything that raises your blood sugar is also going to raise your insulin levels. And there's three main culprits here. First and foremost being food. Okay, so that's the first bullet, food, especially carbohydrates. We already talked about this, right? We know that carbohydrates raise our blood sugar the most, and therefore they're going to raise our insulin levels to get that blood sugar back down, right? But what a lot of people also don't realize is there are non-food related reasons for high blood sugar and high insulin levels. And that's where we get into the medications and stress. So medications, certain medications, not all, certain medications can raise your insulin levels. And I'm not just talking about insulin injections. A lot of people make the mistake thinking just insulin, but this is actually a well-known side effect of steroid medications like prednisone. So when you take a medication like that, if you test your blood sugar, you will see it's a lot higher while you're on a steroid medication. Also, certain chemotherapy drugs can raise your blood sugar. By no means am I saying you should not take those. You need to take those when you're prescribed them. You're prescribed them for a reason, but just know they will impact your blood sugar. And then another medication that you might not realize is raising your insulin levels is most diabetes medications. Okay. That's actually the way that most of the diabetes medications work, is they actually tell your pancreas to pump out more insulin to lower your blood sugar. So a lot of people, again, think that only insulin injections do this. No, insulin injections are straight up insulin. You're injecting insulin straight to your body. So that's obvious. Of course, that raises your insulin levels and causes insulin resistance. But a lot of the oral medications, a lot of these other diabetes drugs are telling your pancreas, pump out more insulin, and it works, right? It'll lower your blood sugar at first, for sure. I'm not going to argue that, but it's just like Bert, right? It used to take him 7 drinks to get a buzz. What's the solution if he wants to get a buzz? Oh, now he needs to drink 8 drinks, 9 drinks, right? And this is the vicious cycle that people get stuck in with these medications. It works for 6 months and then your A1C goes back up. So then they increase the dose or they prescribe a second drug, right? So I'm not saying that the blood sugar medications don't work to lower your blood sugar, but I am saying that most of them create this vicious cycle where your body becomes more and more insulin resistant and you need more and more insulin to lower your blood sugar. And then lastly here, stress. This is another culprit. And when I say stress, I mean both physical and emotional stress. Both of these can raise your blood sugar and therefore raise your insulin levels. So you might find that your numbers are higher when you're underslept, which is a physical stress on the body, or emotionally stressed out, or fighting an illness or infection. So emotional stress, your blood sugar will rise, right? If you're having an argument with someone or you're stuck in traffic and you're all frazzled running late, your blood sugar is going to be higher. If you're fighting an illness or an infection, again, someone mentioned earlier COVID, like your numbers are going to go up when your body's fighting off an infection, a virus, or anything at all. So all of the things on my screen here result in high insulin. Anything that raises your blood sugar, insulin's going to follow suit because its goal is to lower your blood sugar. Anytime your blood sugar's high, insulin will also be high. And when insulin levels are persistently high over time, your body will create a resistance to it. Okay, so I want to tell you about another client of mine, Shelly. And just a little background about Shelly. For those of you who have like really high blood sugar numbers, right? You're seeing numbers consistently over 250 in the 300s. That was Shelly. Okay, so I want you to know that you're not alone if you have really high numbers. Shelly had a very strong family history of diabetes. She saw her dad suffer just so greatly and die prematurely from diabetes complications. And so she had a strong family history. And here's the thing about Shelly. She was really well-versed in low carb. So she was starting to wonder, she goes, it's is my body broken or am I just missing something? I don't know. And she goes, Mallory, I mean, if I already know what to do when it comes to low carb, are you really going to be able to help me? And I said, Shelly, absolutely. I can already see you're missing something really important here. And I later found out, by the way, that her husband was a nutritionist who specialized in low carb. Like back in the day, he did like Atkins style stuff. So that's why she was so well versed in low carb. And she was, right? And I love working with people like that. It's great. But she was missing something really important. And what's cool about this is I think like within our first month together, she started seeing her numbers in like the 150s, which for her was a huge feat. For her, that was life-changing. She literally went for years wondering if something was broken because her blood sugar was just always high, to seeing numbers in the 150s, like mid 100s within a month or two. Like amazing, right? So I'm sharing this story for those of you who have really high numbers, or maybe you're wondering what more you could possibly be doing since you've already gone low carb. Okay, so first let's just review what we learned really quick before we get into Q&A, and then I will share that 7 Days to Balance Blood Sugar resource with you. So in core concept number 1, we covered the 3 most common mistakes that I see people make in hopes that it'll improve their diabetes. So again, these mistakes are focusing on calories when we know that not all calories are created equal. They all impact your blood sugar very differently. Following the mainstream guidelines, the most popular being to eat somewhere between 30 to 60 grams of carbs per meal. A lot of you guys were told to eat 45. And relying on medications, which can actually make insulin resistance worse over time by increasing insulin levels in your body. In core concept number 2, again, you might want to take a picture of this screen here. It's a good one. In core concept number 2, we discovered that insulin resistance is the real problem and insulin sensitivity is the goal. Insulin sensitivity is the one and only real solution to type 2 diabetes. And then in core concept number 3, we learned that persistently high insulin creates insulin resistance and persistently low insulin reverses it. So are you guys still with me? Does that review sum things up okay for you? Let me know in the chat. And then also tell me in the chat if I'm right here with what I have on my screen. So you showed up today because you want to repair your blood sugar and A1C and actually put diabetes in remission. You want to get off meds or have your doctor stop pushing more medications on you. You want to prevent more serious complications that you've seen other people suffer from, like vision loss, amputations, kidney failure. You want to stop feeling overwhelmed and confused by all the conflicting information out there. You want to bypass all the trial and error and just do what works. You want a real solution, not a Band-Aid. And you want your energy, mobility, and zest for life back. You guys want to feel better than you have in a really long time, right? So honestly, I do not think you guys are asking too much here. Cool. I see a lot of yeses in the chat. Okay, so I promised you that by the end of this training, I would show you how to take the guesswork out of diabetes so you can repair your blood sugar and A1C without a lifetime of medications. And I want you guys to know that nothing I shared with you today is just some random theory that I came up with. Okay, I learn from really smart people, by the way. I just love to interpret it for people like you and share the information with you. So this is all rooted in science, and it works because it addresses the actual root cause of type 2 diabetes. So unlike medications, this is not just a Band-Aid approach. And I know that this is possible for you no matter how long you've been struggling or how high your A1C is right now. I have worked with people of all different ages and all different ethnic backgrounds who are just like you. I've worked with a wide range of blood sugar readings and A1C results, right? I work with people just like you, people who love good food. They have busy social lives. They cook for their families. They like to go out to eat. They travel. They play with their kids, their grandkids. And if they can do it, I know that you guys can do it too. Okay, so at this point, you guys have a choice. You can continue navigating this on your own, crossing your fingers at every 3-month checkup and hoping that you get it right this time. Or you can cut through the noise with my help and walk into your next appointment with confidence by committing to a proven plan. So you guys type B in the chat if you're okay with me taking a little time to share how I can help beyond this 1-hour masterclass. Those of you who are interested, stick around because I'm excited to share what I've done to help as many of you guys as possible. Awesome. Okay, cool. I see a lot of B's coming into the chat. So I'm excited for this part. So introducing the Type 2 Transformation Program. This is a 12-week step-by-step system that's proven to reverse insulin resistance so you can lower your blood sugar and A1C without relying on a lifetime of blood sugar medication. So this is what I've created so that I can help as many people as possible. And this is the only online course created for foodies who want to reverse their insulin resistance and put diabetes in remission with real food. So the outcome of the Type 2 Transformation Program is insulin sensitivity, right? The ultimate goal, obviously. We will settle for no less. So just remember, insulin sensitivity is the opposite of insulin resistance, and it's the only real solution here to type 2 diabetes. So type yes in the chat if you understand that insulin sensitivity is exactly what you need right now. Type yes in the chat. So here's what you can expect to happen as you become more insulin sensitive. So you can expect to see lower blood sugar in days, fewer symptoms in weeks, and a lower A1C in 3 months flat. So unlike medications, this is not a Band-Aid. This is not a temporary fix. We're not just artificially lowering your numbers so that they look good for a few months. What we're doing here is we're literally repairing what's broken. Again, not a single pill, injection, or supplement on the market can make you inherently insulin sensitive. But what I've done is I've cherry-picked the most effective strategies to achieve this, and I've laid it out with a very intentional step-by-step plan inside the program. Cool. I'm so glad. I love that the message is loud and clear. Insulin sensitivity, right? So here's the thing about the program, you guys. The success rates inside the Type 2 Transformation Program are sky high. Over 99% of my clients have a lower A1C within 3 to 4 months. And a lot of them are actually able to reduce or eliminate some of their medications in the same time frame. So simply said, if your A1C is still over 5.7, then I know my program can help you. So let me tell you about an old client of mine, Lisa. When Lisa was first diagnosed, she was given zero information, zero guidance. She was just written a prescription and sent out the door. And I'm sure some of you guys can relate, right? So she had a strong family history of basically unresolved type 2 diabetes, and she was desperate for answers. So she started buying books. She started researching online, turning to Dr. Google, and really she just found herself overwhelmed by all the conflicting information. She was being pulled in too many different directions. And that's when she found me, and she attended this exact masterclass. And she decided to enroll in the Type 2 Transformation Program. So in just 3 short months, here's what happened. Her A1C was down to 5.4, and her doctor took her off metformin. Her doctor was also shocked. Her doctor was very surprised. Wow, again, never seen someone do this before. How'd you do it? So Lisa still checks in with me periodically, and I'm happy to report that a whole year later, more than a year later, her A1C is still under 5.7 without any diabetes medications. So at this point, you might be wondering, how does this work? Like, how are 99% of the people who enroll in the Type 2 Transformation Program able to get such amazing results? What is the big secret here? So let me tell you, it comes down to what I've included in the program and how I've structured it. So let me take a minute to go over each of the components of the program, which includes the Type 2 Transformation Program method, exclusive resources, daily access to a Facebook group, and weekly group coaching calls with me on Zoom. So when you enroll, you get immediate access to the membership site, which is where the Type 2 Transformation Program method is laid out for you step by step, 1 week at a time. And I have it all listed here for you. So think of this like a roadmap where I'm going to show you exactly what to do to repair your blood sugar and A1C by reversing your insulin resistance. So the method is broken down week by week into digestible bite-sized chunks so you can easily cut through the noise and get results fast. So you can do this without all the agonizing trial and error or jumping into something too soon and then giving up too soon, right? So you don't have to go, between 3-month checkups being so nervous and anxious and in the dark. With this, you're going to know exactly what you're doing. You're going to feel confident that you are actually repairing your insulin resistance. So the method here is the guts of the program. It's my proprietary method. And honestly, I can say this, if you do nothing else but follow the method, how it's laid out for you here, you're going to get results. But of course, you guys, you don't just get a step-by-step, week-by-week plan to follow. You're also going to get really helpful resources that are going to help you take what you learn and run with it. So these are the shortcuts, you guys. This is how my clients are able to get such amazing results in such a short amount of time, even after years of struggling and piling on prescriptions. So these resources make what I teach actionable, and that allows you to bypass the learning curve and just do what works. Just do what works to get results. So what I'm talking about here is video and audio trainings, lists, cheat sheets, guides, templates, recipes, and a whole lot more. So what this is not a 12 weeks of meal plans. I'm not going to tell you exactly what to eat. That won't really teach you anything. This is 12 weeks of education and guidelines to help you repair your insulin resistance in a way that tastes good to you, right? You're going to get so many, you'll get lists of ingredients. You'll have plenty. There are thousands of recipes floating around in the program that you can choose from if you'd like. You don't have to eat anything you don't like. I'm not a big fan of meal plans for that reason alone. So when you join the Type 2 Transformation Program, you get lifetime access to the membership site, which has the Type 2 Transformation method I just showed you and all of these resources. So you can access the membership site 24/7. And this is really helpful, right? Because we all have different schedules. Sometimes we need to go back and re-listen or re-watch something more than once. So that resource is available to you. But honestly, you guys, one of the biggest assets of the program is that you don't just get access to me. You get access to a really awesome community of people who committed to the exact same process with you. So that's where the Type 2 Transformation Facebook group comes into play. So while I'm very active in the Facebook group, I'm there to answer your questions and give you feedback. You're also going to get a lot of advice and support from other members. So you can use the Facebook group to post a quick question and you'll get a really quick response like what you see here. Or you can share something exciting that you'd like to celebrate with everyone, like your A1C results or anything else that comes up along the way. Some people take a picture of their glucose meter and say, wow, I've never seen a number that low before, right? So we love celebrating those kind of wins with you day in and day out during your time in the program. So the Facebook group is arguably the most well-loved component of the entire program. And again, available to you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, during your time in the program. And then in case there's any doubt that this is truly a program created by a foodie for foodies, just check it out. These are some of the photos and recipes that are being posted in the Facebook group. And honestly, you guys, this kind of stuff is being shared in the group every single day. So we share pictures of what we're eating. We share low carb ingredients that we find. It is so cool. I feel so lucky to have like an army of people out there finding just Just the other day, one of my clients shared a tortilla, and usually I'm very skeptical. She posted a picture of a tortilla and she goes, "Is this okay?" She snapped the ingredients list. I looked at the food label. I looked at the front. I go, "That is amazing." It was made from cauliflower flour, and I think maybe almond flour, coconut flour or something. But I was like, that checks out, right? So we're sharing things like this with each other. We're sharing pictures of what we're eating, low carb ingredients that we find. We're sharing recipes and just snapping pictures of what we're eating to keep everybody inspired. And also desserts, you guys, my clients find the best dessert recipes that won't spike your blood sugar. So pictured here, I see pumpkin spice chaffles. We make sugar-free whipped cream. We make peanut butter mousse or different types of mousse, meringues, macaroons, cookies, like the list goes on and on. We have a lot of fun in the Facebook group. But if having a step-by-step plan to follow, straightforward resources, and daily access to me and the rest of the community at your fingertips isn't enough, there's also an opportunity to hop on Zoom for group coaching calls with me twice a week, actually. I misspoke, twice a week. So this is where we can have a back and forth conversation to check in with each other and to chat through your particular situation. So you're not just going to get feedback from me on these Zoom calls. Other people are going to chime in and share what's working for them as well. So that's really, really valuable, right? So these group calls are way more interesting than one-to-one sessions because you're going to learn from other people's experiences. You're just going to hear other people sharing their stories, and you're going to benefit from the whole collective experience. So I will also add that the Zoom calls are totally optional. You have everything you need to get results without them. But I do love connecting with everyone a couple times a week and giving everyone an opportunity to do that. And I'll also add that the Zoom calls are recorded and available for replay. So if you can't attend live and you want to refer back to them at any point, you totally can. Okay, so by now, you're probably thinking, all right, this sounds great and all, but how much is this going to cost me? And for a long time, it was hard for me to put a price tag on this because what is it truly worth for you to make massive strides towards remission after months or years or even decades of dealing with this? But I knew I had to put a tangible number on it, so I decided to look at it like this. So just to put it in perspective, a one-to-one session with me is a minimum of $250 an hour. So working with me just once a week for 3 months would be over $3,000. And that does not include any support outside of our scheduled time, nor does it include any of the additional resources I mentioned prior to this. So 3 months of one-to-one sessions would be over $3,000, and that's without any of the bells and whistles. I know that's out of reach for a lot of people, and honestly, I want to show up for you guys way more than once a week for a 1-hour session. So my mission is to help thousands of people put diabetes in remission by the end of my career. So let me share with you how I'm doing this. So as you can see, the Type 2 Transformation Program is very comprehensive. I've got all your bases covered. And if you join, you get access to everything I mentioned. So you get the Type 2 Transformation Program method, 12 weeks. This is valued at $1,500. You get exclusive resources that are going to help you quickly implement what you learn. This is valued at $1,300. You get access to the Facebook group for daily support from myself and your peers. This is valued at $1,000. And remember, this is the most fun part of the program. And then you get access to weekly group coaching calls twice a week to get some live support, live coaching and feedback, valued at another $1,300. So with everything included in the program, it's easily worth over $5,000, but don't worry, you guys, I am not going to charge you $5,000. I'm not even going to charge you half of that, which is even less than all those one-to-one sessions. So for those of you who showed up today, I am fully committed to helping you say goodbye to diabetes. Nothing is more fulfilling to me than watching you guys succeed. So I'm offering a special opportunity for you guys to enroll in the Type 2 Transformation Program today with 2 super special enrollment bonuses. So you guys tell me in the chat if you're still with me. I want to make sure we're all still here as I get into this. So just type yes in the chat if you're still with me. All right, cool. So normally when I offer the Type 2 Transformation Program outside of a 5-day challenge or outside of my masterclass, it's $1,500. It's actually almost $1,600. But for those of you who showed up and participated today, I've got those 2 special enrollment bonuses for you. So first, I'm going to give you an opportunity to save $150 with bonus number 1. So this means you can get immediate access to everything I shared with you today for your first payment of just $483 on a 3-month payment plan. Or you have another option. You can actually save even more money. If you want to do a pay in full, you can save an extra $200 with just a one-time payment of $1,249. So 2 options here. So you can really get access to everything I shared with you for your first payment of $483 on a 3-month plan, or you can save even more with a one-time payment. So hang tight though, because I've got another awesome bonus to share with you. Okay, bonus number 2. And this is because I really want to reward those of you who showed up today. So I'm gifting those of you who enroll right now. I'll give you the link in a sec. Those of you who enroll right now, before I end this masterclass with an additional bonus month inside the program, totally free. So this means instead of 3 months, you get 4 months to access everything I shared earlier, totally free. So that's 30 days, 30 additional days to get access to me and your peers through the Facebook group. That's 4 more weeks that we get to have back and forth conversations on our Zoom calls. And that's 33% more time to get your A1C out of the danger zone with me by your side. So this bonus month is valued at over $1,000, and you can get it free when you sign up right now before I end the masterclass. So I'm going to drop the link. There's going to be a button that pops up on your screen for those of you who are ready to get enrolled. You don't need to sit through Q&A if you're certain that this is your next best step. All right, so if you guys are feeling ready to get enrolled, you want to take advantage of both of those bonuses, just go ahead and click the button that popped up on your screen. And what you're going to do, you're just going to enter your payment information to get enrolled, and then you're going to get an email that gives you immediate access to everything. So, but those of you who still need more information, you can stick around and we'll go through Q&A. But before we do that, here's what's on the table, you guys. Here's what's on the table right now. Here's what I'm offering. So you can join a 12-week program that has a 99% success rate, have access to a community of peers who are eager to support you, and you get my guidance, of course, for your first payment of $483 with an additional bonus month of support, totally free. Or if you want to save even more money, you can save an extra $200 on top of the already discounted price with a one-time payment of $1,249. So again, you can just click on the button on your screen to get enrolled and get immediate access. Okay, one more time before we get into Q&A, just to review, the first bonus, the $150 discount, is valid for the next 4 days, okay? And that applies to both the 3-month payment plan and the one-time payment. So either way, you get $150 savings. And then the second bonus, the 1 additional month for free, expires when I end this training here in just a few minutes. So if you're certain that working with me inside the program is the next best step for you, you don't need to hang out any longer. You can just click the button on your screen, enter your information, and you will get an email with immediate access to everything. We can't wait to welcome you into the community. But if you're still on the fence, we'll go ahead and get into Q&A after I drop the free bonus that I promised you. So before we get into Q&A, let's give you that 7 days to balance blood sugar meal plan. You guys should have a pop-up on your screen right now. And in case you're wondering what it looks like, this is what you should see when you click on it. Don't worry if you're having trouble opening this right now. You will get an email shortly that has the link to this. So don't worry. But this is what it's going to look like. And just so you know, all the font in blue is a link to a